So, this episode is going to revolve around dating. More so dating from a guy's perspective, or at least dating for men, but interestingly enough, there's career women that's mentioned somewhere here, and I don't know how to feel about it. Although I feel like that's something that I'll definitely have to get into when I get to that point. But all in all, it is revolving around dating, much as it's mostly for men. Although, before I can get to any of that, I found out one of the most interesting facts about the US of A that just kind of made me look at them a little bit differently, and feel sorry for some of them at least. Now, apparently, according to a very recent study, 5% of Americans are having sex just so that they can save up on heating bills because of the surging utility costs. Like, let me try and put this into context so that some of you can understand this a little bit better. There's some Americans, about 5% of them, that are actually feeling cold and they are looking at all the other options and they're like, you know what? Considering that the cost of power is so high, I propose we do this since you feel warmer when you're in my arms and I feel warmer when my dick is inside your vagina. Let's fuck and save up on these electricity bills, right?
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Like, when people are busy complaining about electricity costs in Kenya, like, we usually complain about it as though we're being charged, to the moon and back and shit for just a little bit of power. But getting to the point where people are fucking just for the sake of heat, like, that's mad though. Granted, for us Kenyans, we're not having that much of a heat problem, at least not in the way most people think, because like for us guys, like we fuck because we're on heat, not because we need heat. Like we do it because we're mostly on heat and there's a bunch of us that are fucking all the time. And normally whenever us guys are complaining about electricity costs, like you get to a point where it feels so expensive to pay for power that you're sort of kind of wondering if choosing another option like solar or just going back to like using like candles and paraffin is a good option. But for Americans, it's getting to a point where it's like even those aren't an option for them. They're like, you know what, we just have to fuck to stay warm? That's absolutely mad. But anyways, let me just read the article that came with this story. So it says, and I quote, "Pay your heating bill or have sex to stay warm. Faced with soaring utility costs, some folks are choosing the latter." That's according to a new report from New Homes Mate, a marketplace for new construction homes. It found that 46% of the 1,000 Americans surveyed are struggling to afford their bills. Roughly 25% pile on extra clothing, while 35% are forced to choose between heat and groceries. To keep themselves toasty, 5% are getting hot and heavy between the sheets, and 2% are getting drunk, according to the report. Though electricity costs dropped more than 20% in 2023, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, they're still up 29% from January 2020. End quote. Like, when you kind of think about it, you almost don't know how to help these people because you can help them with heat, but you can also help them with heat. Either one is okay because if you gave them heat, then they wouldn't need to screw as much, or you could also give them heat so that they can continue screwing as much just for the sake of heat. The only people that I actually feel sorry for here are the children, because I don't condone pedophilia and I don't think kids should be doing it that early. So I'm sure they're the ones that are probably the ones suffering the most here. But all in all, considering that this podcast wasn't supposed to start on a suffering note, I am going to leave it at that and start this podcast with a bit more warmth by saying, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who wants to export heat to the US. And whether the green that it comes with is a green card or actual money or both, either one will be appreciated by many of us. He is a man who believes that jumping to conclusions can be a form of cardio. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. This episode has started off in a very hot but also very cold way, which sounds like a lukewarm statement, and I'm just sort of playing with puns right about now. Either way, thank you so much for choosing to listen to the Break Time Podcast. Hopefully you'll actually enjoy the episode and actually go all the way till the end, because I have a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. And considering that this is a Friday episode, episode, it's usually one of the ones where I don't look for content per se. I usually hop on to Twitter or X, as you'd like to call it, and I fish for a couple of tweets, and you, the listener, can also send in a couple of tweets that you believe we should probably discuss. And the drill in doing that is particularly simple, almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet, you send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. On Facebook or on IG, if it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, or ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @thebreaktime_podcast on IG or @thebreaktime_podcast on Facebook, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. Now, I have a couple of tweets that I need to get into, but before I can do any of that, I want to start by discussing career women for a little bit. Now, people have said a lot of things, good and bad, about career women. Normally, women speak very well about career women. They talk about how the women to look up to, blah, blah. And the women usually paint them in a pretty good light. The men, on the other hand, not as much. Usually a lot of the guys that are talking about career women tend to not talk about them in the best of lights. It's usually the whole they choose their career over marriage or a family, blah blah. And people will tend to have those gender war issues, but I'm not focusing on that right now. I want to focus on the dating part, because people don't talk too much about dating career women. So when I found a clip that was posted up by a lady known as Dr. Zippy Okoth on IG, and she was busy talking about how career women are the easiest to seduce and date, I was particularly interested, and when I listened to the contents of her argument, my interest was piqued quite a bit. Now, I am going to give my thoughts in a little bit, but before I can do that, let me just play the clip for you, then I can talk about it. So, here it is.
I think career women are easier to seduce than those who are not career women.
How so?
Because we are not after your money. We don't ask for fare. We just want a good conversation.
Bring yourself.
Yes, we'll bring ourselves. If you want to, after the date, if you feel like sending me some money, fine. Or surprising me with a gift, fine. But we will not tell you come on to me, fare sitakuja. If I like you, I'll come. Or I'll tell you, come and pick me, yes, and stuff like that, yes. Yeah. My car is always full tank, so I talk to my fare.
Oh my God, Zippy. Oh my God, Zippy. My car is always full tank.
Yes, I do full tank once.
Hey!
Mpaka iishe.
Hakuna mambo ya red light?
Maisha. Ati kila siku unapita kwa petrol station? No.
Hey!
Logically, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to think of time. Whether you go to fuel every day, at the end of the week, you'll have used the same amount of money. So just fill that tank and save yourself the 10 minutes of going to the petrol station.
Kila siku
tupitia. Time is money.
Oh.
Yes.
And how do you like to be treated as a career woman? Several phone calls a day when you're in the office?
Call when you can. If I'm not picking, it means I'm in a meeting. Yeah. But I wouldn't mind a text in the morning and a late night call,
Yeah.
Yeah. In between, you can surprise me with a lunch. Either come take me or send me lunch money, small things. Let me tell you, Jagero.
Yeah.
Girls don't change.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Even at 50 years, girls don't change.
How do you
Even
mean?
my mother at 60. Akitumiwa tu lunch eti ndio hiyo 500 kula nayo lunch. You just hear the way she's giggling,
Okay, so having listened to this, can I say that what she's saying is true, or is it a stack of bullshit? Well, from the minimal interaction, actually, why am I calling it minimal? From the interactions I've had with career women, with women that are very, very about succeeding in whatever career they're at, I'd probably say that whatever she's chatting is a bunch of bullshit. Mostly because I know for a fact, if there's people that are very willing to drop you, especially when you're just trying to get to the point where you guys can start dating, it's career women. My word. if there's people that are hard to bag out here, it's career women. The only set of people that I could possibly say are even harder to bag than career women are senior management level or C-suite types career women. Like, that's another version of career women that's extra hard. It's almost like boss level career women that you just know very well it's not easy for the largest majority of people to bag. But the typical career woman, they also tend to be hard in their own right. Reason being, first of all, it's like, it's not like she's trying to get money from you and shit. Yes, that might seem like they're probably easier because they have their own money, but that actually kind of makes things harder because there's a lot of guys that try to lead with money. There's a lot of guys that try to incentivize women to date them because they have money. So guess what? You trying to incentivize a career woman that's making good money that, you also have good money, so she should date you because you have good money, is probably not going to work because guess what? She's making good money. So that completely changes the entire dynamic for a lot of guys. Then on top of that, they are very willing to drop you should you not be enough of a useful human being in their lives because their career probably comes first and then their friends will come second. So you need to place yourself somewhere close by there for you to even have a chance of actually staying, if not possibly even bagging the babe. And that's not particularly easy because there's a lot of guys that are very good at wasting time. And these women love their time. They are busy trying to excel in the workforce, trying to succeed in the sector industry that they're in and, come out on top. And you think they're going to start putting aside time so that they can continue babysitting your bullshit? That's not going to happen. Maybe some might, if they're very love-struck and shit. But for the most part, that doesn't usually happen. So either you go and you show your value from the jump or you're probably not going to get a chance. And to top things off, if she's making particularly good money, then there's a pretty good chance that you guys will not be meeting up or you won't be taking her out on a date to some of the more regular or bare minimum spots that a lot of guys seem to be taking women out to right now. So it's not like the whole going to the club or going to the bar is going to work as well. And you can't just take her to a basic ass restaurant. You actually have to put in some effort because, they value effort and thoughtfulness and shit. So bare minimum just doesn't cut it for them. Now, on the plus side of all of this, at least the one thing that I can tell you for a fact is if you manage to bag a career woman and she's great and, she manages to not put 90% of herself into the workforce or her career, then for the most part, you'll probably have a pretty good relationship. Provided that you're not trying to cause any drama, provided that, you can fulfill your end of the bargain and, she's not too demanding on the financial side, in the name of a bunch of other things, provided that she's pretty chill and she's a career woman, if you manage to bag her, you guys can stay together for a particularly long time because they're actually very nice once you get to know them, unless they're bitches. Then, if you can see that she's a bitch, then you should probably avoid that one and go for someone who's a lot better. But all in all, I'd say career women can be pretty good, but at the same time, they're not gullible. Some of them might be bitches, but if you can find a good one, stick to them and you will be happy for a very long time. Because they're actually not as demanding as some of the other ones might be. Although then again, I might be wrong about that shit, but for now, I am going to leave it at that and get to the tweets for this episode. So, on to the very first tweet of this episode, which was written by a guy who said, and I quote, "When a babe shoots her shot face to face, you're usually just there and you don't know whether you should be shy like them bitches or whether you should stand strong like a lion. It's usually so unnatural." End quote. Okay, so as a guy that has been hit on by women a bunch of different times, I will say for a fact that most guys do not know how to act when a babe is shooting her shot at him because most of them haven't had enough exposure to that to know how to act. There's a vast majority of guys that actually do not get hit on or even get female attention voluntarily without them having to go out and seek it. So as a result, if they were to get female attention just from the jump out of nowhere, they wouldn't know how to act because normally they're usually on the other end of the table doing the approaching, shooting the shot, trying to get the attention from the other person. So for them to be put on the other side, all of a sudden it's like this very, very foreign territory for them. And a lot of us really don't know how to behave. And I'll even say, even for someone like me that's been hit on by women in a number of different ways before, I will say that there are some more aggressive ways that people will shoot their shots that, if used by a woman on me, can actually make me feel a little bit uneasy. So to be quite honest, for most guys, it's perfectly normal to not know how to act because we're not used to having people shoot their shots on us. And even for those of us that probably might have experience in it, it's not like we have as much understanding or as much ease with it as a lot of women do, particularly the ones that are used to having guys shoot their shots at them. Because the more it happens, the more you understand what to do when that happens and to get around certain issues. Say, for example, if you're not interested, or if you want to keep the guy waiting, or if you just want to sort of, move along with the guy. So all in all, I totally understand where a dude is coming from. And while I know that most guys probably may not experience this, for those who might, if you ever get into that situation, you can always be nice and cordial. And if you're interested in the person, go along with it. And if not, then, you can find the most subtle way to turn them down. At least I think that's probably the best piece of advice that anyone can really give you when you're approached. But all in all, that's the best piece of general advice that I can probably give you. The rest is probably a little bit more specific and very context based, so I'll just leave it at that and move it on to our next tweet of this episode, which said, and I quote, "What the red pill messes up with young men is telling them that they have to be harsh." End quote. Okay, can I really say that that was really the case? No, not necessarily. Personally, I've said for a very long time, maybe not on the mic, but probably off it, that the biggest mess up that the red pill made was getting into relationship dynamics. Like, if they'd have stuck to whatever it was they were talking about in the name of self-improvement, and they stopped it right at the when you get into a relationship bits, they'd have probably been pretty solid for the most part. Because the red pill sort of exists as, some people will call it second degree manosphere. I usually refer to it as third degree alpha male, because there was the first degree, which came with the book known as The Game and the movie Hitch, which came in like 2005. Then from around 2011, there was Crazy Stupid Love with Ryan Gosling, pretty nice movie. And that was backed up with the men's style influencers that, were all about aesthetics. And then now later on in the 2010s, from like the mid to late 2010s, that was when Rollo Tomasi with the book The Rational Male, as well as a bunch of red pill content creators, also came in with like the third degree alpha male. And the bastardization of the term alpha male and this glorification of the high status or the high value man and so on and so forth. But all in all, that's how I've always seen, the progression in terms of guys and male coaching or male self-improvement talks from like the beginning, when people were just looking at it as trying to pick up babes. And the thing is, if you look at the first and the second degree alpha male, they were mostly interested in just trying to get a guy towards a point where he was a little bit more appreciated and he could bag a babe or a couple of babes. Like, that was mostly it. And even when you look at how they did it, first degree alpha male, which came with the game, was pretty simple. It was more on, using social cues and, being able to verbally get your way through, because, if you can talk your way through and you can charm her, then, you can bag the babe. Then when you look at second degree, it went into the aesthetics. It didn't just sit on just the talking. It also went to the looking, so that you could attract the attention of multiple people because you dress well and you look good, and you could attract more women and you could hit on them, and you could get yourself dates and multiple babes and blah blah blah. But now the third degree, it was just supposed to pick up on that and improve on it, in that you can make yourself look like a potentially good mate, because if you earn well, if you've improved yourself as well on the physical aspect, so your body looks great, you dress pretty well, and of course the dressing requires money, so your money is doing all right, and you also have this wealth of knowledge and you have social capital, then you look like a stable partner and you look like a great partner choice from the jump. And all of that was great. But the moment people started poking into relationship dynamics, that was when shit started going sideways. Because I can get the whole, oh, you should avoid certain babes because these are the ones that'll probably be gold diggers. And if you look at it, if you're a guy that's making a lot of money, then you'll attract women that may want to have some of that money. Doesn't mean that it's all of them, but they exist. Looking for certain cues and red flags in women, that one I can get. But when someone is nailing down traditional gender roles in a certain manner, saying that women must always be under men, and just saying a bunch of shit about how men should be allowed to have multiple women, but the woman is supposed to stay loyal to the man, and men should be allowed to be polygamous, or women should be allowed to vote and shit. Like, the moment people started getting into relationship dynamics and it started seeming a lot more demeaning for the woman, that was when they fucked up. Because honestly, we're trying to get ourselves, as most of the men that are out here busy just trying to find our way in the world, we're trying to get ourselves just to the point where we can get someone that we'd like to do life with, or at least someone that we can trust to be with as a partner. Like, the whole dynamics of how to carry yourself in a relationship, that's some shit that is a little beyond most of our pay grades. And I feel like the other 2 degrees of alpha male that came before didn't speak about it because they probably understood that relationship dynamics are very different. Every relationship is different because every individual is different. So it's not like every situation is going to have the same answer. Some are very contextually different. So maybe avoiding them is probably a good idea. The problem is the red pill didn't feel like doing that shit, and they decided to start ruling guys out as simps or as alpha males, or certain women shouldn't be accepted because they deserve to be on the streets, and some of them are hoes and shit like that. Which honestly, while I can get there's some bits of it that work well because you're not in a relationship or you're trying to get into a relationship, the moment you get into a relationship, most of the shit that these guys say, just throw it out the window. Like, not unless if you're particularly shit at choosing partners, of which even then, still that advice doesn't help too much, and you probably have other issues that you need to look through. I'd still advise against using red pill advice when you're in a relationship. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this shit, but I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very final tweet of this episode, which says, and I quote, "Do you guys feel like you have rizz like back in the day, or have you become like nonchalant all the way till you don't even care and you're not even interested? I have numbers of very cute babes, but my rizz is in the pits. Have you guys gotten to this stage? And if you have gotten to this stage, what next?" End quote. Okay. So maybe it's just a me thing, but I feel like over the past couple of years, we've become a lot less social as people, probably because we just realized that you don't need to be as, social physically for you to get the job done. Like, way back in the day, because people didn't have phones and IG, or, even though people had phones, IG wasn't that big of a thing, and, people weren't sliding into DMs as much, people would have to go and approach women. Granted, at the same time, cold approaching is something that's also gone down quite a bit. You can blame that on the Me Too movement and how that affected people, not necessarily here in Kenya, but through social media made a lot more guys a lot more hesitant to approach women. But still, I wouldn't say that that's the entire reason. I think most guys actually nowadays aren't hitting on women because, or at least aren't cold approaching women because for the most part, they'd much rather use referrals. Like, people nowadays are all about doing the whole referral thing where it's like you go, you see a babe that you like, and you'll try find out what her name is, you'll try find what her IG is if you have a homie or two that just so happen to be following the babe, if for example she's private, even though she's not, and you'll go talk to them and be like, oh, so there's this babe, oh, is she in a relationship? Can you introduce me and shit? And it's something that I see a lot of guys doing from time to time. Now, granted, it's not every guy that does that. And, for a lot of us, also because we tend to stay in our own cocoons, we just look at something we like and then we look away. Because I guess the reputational damage of being rejected when your whole squad is seeing you is something that we'd much rather avoid. Like, I guess there's a lot of guys that just kind of look at it and they're like, you know what? It's not worth it. Now, granted, there are still some people that do cold approaching. It's not very common, and for the few that do, their success rate can actually be pretty good. And still, even though it might not be as good, the number of guys that would much rather slide into a babe's DMs is actually a lot higher. But even then, like, you find that those guys don't have rizz per se. It's not like they're trying pickup lines. It's like, as long as I can get the message across that I'm interested in banging you or I'm interested in you, then I'm good. Which, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I see it happen with a lot of guys. And because there's not that many guys that are particularly good conversationalists, you just find that it's like people now just go in and they're expecting rejection because they're using a shit strategy. They don't care. And, you know, they're just hoping that things will probably work out in their favor, or the babe will see them and like them or some shit. Although, then again, considering that this guy did mention that he has numbers of cute girls, it could also be that this guy just isn't interested in those particularly cute babes. Like, just because a babe is very, very attractive, generally, doesn't mean that you yourself have to be attracted to her by default. Like, different guys have different preferences and different likings, and say maybe you have a lot of petite girls that, you know, seem interested in you. For example, if you're kind of like me and you prefer thicker babes, then it makes sense for you to not reach out and be trying to hit on them all the time because they're not entirely your type. And that's particularly okay. Just because they're attractive to some other guys and they're not attractive to you doesn't mean that you have to hit on them because the other guys haven't gotten a chance. It's not like it's a redemption from slavery and you get to be free so that the people who are still in bondage can live vicariously through you. Nah, you're an individual and you've managed to bag those numbers. You get to decide what you want to do with them. But then again, that's a problem that affects a much upper tier of guys. For most guys that are unable to get babes, I'd say build up on your social skills, try and become a lot better of a conversationalist. Then you can probably start dealing with the problems of, you know, dealing with women that you're not entirely attracted to that are still particularly attractive. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this shit, just the same way I could be wrong about a bunch of other things on this episode, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at BagakaTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is at The Breaktime Podcast and at The Breaktime_podcast, respectively. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.